Okay, so thank you everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Anil Chaudhary.
So I need to make a brief introduction, Anil.
Sure.
Okay. So good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this conversation brought to you by Bytes Bengaluru and Dayanand Sagar University, Bengaluru. We're talking about core of business delivery and operations, consistency, predictability, and continuous service improvement. The topic, every challenge has a few visible obstacles, but many hidden opportunities. Fear of failure keeps one busy, avoiding those obstacles. On the other hand, learning from those failures while pursuing success navigates to those opportunities. If one sees more opportunities than obstacles in a situation, that means that he or she is on the right path. Business delivery and operations face these challenging situations very frequently. Three core expectations from business delivery and operations, namely consistency, predictability, and continuous service improvement, can be achieved by effectively handling those challenges. The speaker will be sharing a real professional life examples from the IT industry. It will also showcase how he and his team applied the principle of sticking to the basics through a simple 6-step approach to meet the challenging situations and achieving consistency, predictability, and continuous service improvement. Mr. Anil Chaudhary, AKC, spent 3 plus decades in the IT industry performing various roles. AKC led large teams and engagements serving clients across the globe, encompassing multiple industries and technologies. During the last 15 years, he associated with business leaders and senior executives to help them succeed in their business strategies and IT initiatives. The stint included 2 years each in the UK, the United States, and many short trips to more than 20 countries. This exposure helped him understand better the unstated expectations and aspirations of global clients, executives, and leaders. AKC now works as advisor, consultant, mentor, guide, and speaker, and author. He aims to help individuals and organizations to nurture their potential by sharing his experience with them. In his pursuit of giving back to the community, he posts weekly, that is on Mondays, on LinkedIn, a short write-up termed Simplify to Amplify, sharing one of his life experiences. He also has a YouTube channel, Imitable Success Stories, that gets a new success story every week from the IT industry. It is named Imitable because the tips and tricks shared can be imitated by anyone to handle their challenges. Thank you very much, Anil, for being here today and taking time off your busy schedule to talk to our faculty and students. And good afternoon once again. And I hand over to you now to speak about core of business delivery and operations, consistency, predictability, and continuous service improvement. Thank you very much.
Excellent, Captain. Really happy to see the details which you shared, and definitely it makes me feel very excited in terms of talking to a group of very, very eminent people who are serving and helping the whole generation, so to say. If you look at in terms of India, the way India is progressing, we are expecting many things to happen this decade and in decades to come. And the knowledge which we are gathering today, will help us move forward. So as you rightly said, in my pursuit, I'm trying to share my experience. I have been mostly involved in delivery and operations and client engagement. So, whenever I'm talking about it, I'm bringing those experience in my write-up, in my conversation, in my talks. And today I will be focusing on that core of delivery and operations, which as per me is consistency and predictability on one hand, complemented with service improvement on a continuous basis on the second hand. Now, while I will cover a high level view of that, I will take one example, the real life example where the service delivery was kind of impacted, and I will share how the team really worked around finding simple steps. Many times when we look at problem as a big problem, it becomes very complicated. But you break it down in smaller piece, it becomes much easier to handle that. So that I will share. I'm expecting about 40 to 45 minutes. And if there's any questions, I can take it up after that. So let me share my screen. Okay. So delivery operations, to my mind, is very fundamental in any industry, right? And that's something which is at the core. Now, while we are talking about any industry, I want to start with an example which is from sports, and then we will get into the industry. So, Captain, you talked about we have a lot of management professionals, or who will be budding managers in future. I'm sure they would be following Formula One to a large extent, because that's really very popular among the young crowd. And one of the main important part of any Formula One race team is the performance of the pit stop crew team, right? How they turn around things pretty fast. That makes a lot of time, those fractional seconds which is saved, and which helps in terms of making a difference. So I have pulled out a detail from last year, from round 1 to 11, the top 10. As you can see, let me try to use my there's a pointer. So if you see in the last year's performance, the top 10 in terms of the time, there are 9 times it's one team, which is Red Bull, right? Once it is Aston Martin, but otherwise 9 times it's Red Bull. So having a best pit stop 9 out of 10 times, that talks a lot, right? And that talks about how the pit stop team is really, looking at the process, optimizing it, doing things in a way where they really feel good about it, right? And that is converted into the output. So that is, I would say, is a consistency, right? In terms of how the team is able to do it compared to other teams. Now, within that itself, if you look at, there are 2 drivers, Max Verstappen, and Sergio Perez. Both were part of Red Bull last year. I think Verstappen is still there. I think Sergio Perez has moved on. So out of 9, Verstappen is 7 times in this list, whereas Perez is 2 times. So if you look at among the 2, Verstappen is not just being consistent and predictable, but is also improving continuously. So the pit stop, the crew of Verstappen pit stop team is really showing a difference. And it's not surprising to see that Verstappen has done reasonably well in the last year. And this year, again, he's doing very well. In fact, he won one of the championship, and twice, unfortunately, he lost podium because of the mechanical failure. So I thought I will start this as an example in terms of when we are talking about consistency, predictability, service improvement, how does it kind of shapes up in terms
These
of...
figures are in minutes, is it?
These are seconds.
These are seconds.
Seconds.
1.88 seconds. Okay.
Absolutely. And
okay.
The best time is actually 1.82 second. Not surprising, it came from Red Bull. Again, a world record. So if you look at from 2.09 seconds to 1.88 seconds, it's a 10% improvement, right? With such a small fractional time, somebody can bring that kind of improvement, right? When we are talking about other processes, we can imagine.
But they do tire changing everything in that time frame. Wow.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Is,
except for fuel. Earlier it used to be fuel also. Now fuel is not given, but tire changes and if anything else needs to be done. So it's amazing the way they really work it out. And the reason I brought it up, because that shows the kind of thing which can be done in terms of improvement, even in such a short period. 2 seconds is hardly anything.
Yep.
Okay, so now that we have seen it, let's try to understand how we are looking at as an organization, and then we will come to excellence part. So for organization to excel, right, the most fundamental thing is the principle and values, right? I don't think any of us will differ on that. So it kind of drives, or it kind of gives a vision for organization. And then on top of that, we have all the different functions and activities which is done, whether it's management, governance, processes, policies, asset. When I say assets, I mean both people and machine, tools, everything, right? Delivery and operation, I'm keeping it a different color because that's what we will cover a little more about it as we go along. Of course, support system and knowledge and innovation. Knowledge and innovation is something which is kind of constantly evolving, right? So that helps it. Now, along with this, the two other component which really makes a big impact is in terms of metrics and measurement. Now, if you really want to move ahead, you must know, where you are and how you are making a change, right? So you have to have a right measures in place, right metrics in place, right, across the functions. And of course, having a financial discipline. What I mean is that a lot of time organizations get carried away with certain external factors. So it's important to understand financially how strong you are and how you can keep it that way. And then, of course, on top of this, everything else is the customer centricity. So for any organization to really excel, I think these are the things you have to have fundamental, which is like principle and values. And on the top, you have to have customer centricity, which is the core of the whole organization. Now, I come from IT, so I will possibly talk about IT a little more. From my perspective, I feel that IT today is enabling business, right, in a lot of sense. There were days when it was a back end, but nowadays it is really in front end. And three key functions where IT is contributing in the business is the strategizing, making changes to business things, and also running the business. So in terms of business strategy, IT helps in terms of adoption, integration of technologies, digital technology in particular, and we are talking about artificial intelligence, VR, AR, analytics, all those stuff. And it is also helping people to look at more in agile mode, what can be done differently, how to look at challenges more as an opportunity than as a problem. So that is the kind of a mindset it's helping do that. And once those things are taken care of, that creates a lot of projects. Now these projects are typically the changes which you bring in your business. You revamp your product, your services, your processes, even your business model to some extent, right? So there again, it contributes. And it does a lot of things in leveraging the technologies, right? So different kind of advancement which is happening and all that. And then finally, once all this is done, then running the business in a continuous way, right? By making it more efficient, making the process more leaner, better, improving the customer satisfactions, giving a sense to the customer that, everything is done for that customer in mind. So, that kind of a thing. So it is individualizing the experience for customer. And of course, it contributes in the reuse and production and all that, right? Recycling and all of that. So if I say that IT is enabling business today is not a overstatement, but within IT, the delivery and operations is the one function which is actually running the IT business. So if you're doing a good service delivery, you are making customer happy, the client is happy, everybody is happy. You can get repeat business, you can do a lot of things. So that's at the core of it. But if that doesn't happen, if there's any impact on service delivery not being good, obviously customer will not be happy, and they are generally force you to do that. So we will see one example as we go along. So I thought before I talk about consistency in service delivery, I will just bring it up. Now let's try to understand, when we say a core of service delivery, then what are these three things? So consistency, in a simple way, it's just repeating your performance, right? Again and again. So if you have done something 6 years back, if you have done that 3 years back, more or less in the same way, you have done that 1 year back, you're really consistent. That's what it means. But having said that, no two delivery or no two things will be exactly same, right? So that's where the predictability comes in. Now, when the variation between repeat performance is within a narrow band, narrow is a subjective thing, but depending on how the organization is, we can call it a narrow band. Like the pit stop where we are talking about, we are talking in seconds and decimals of seconds, right? So there, if we are in that narrow band of 2.02 or 2.04, kind of we are predictable, right? But if 2 becomes 3 seconds, then it is not predictable. So when you look at these two together, consistency and predictability, this is where the trust of the client lies. So if you're able to be consistently delivering a quality work, you are predictable, the customer will trust you. Customer will believe you, what you're saying. They will feel relaxed, not bothered about it. But along with this, you also need to have continuous improvement. And this is needed to ensure the stickiness of the client. This client will start with trusting you, but at the same time, client expects that you will keep improving, not just being consistent and predictable, but you will keep improving on that. And if you're doing it, the client will stick with you, right? Otherwise, they will start looking at. Now, if you look at it in terms of consistency, it's a simple way is to follow a process. If you adhere to a process, if you have a good effective metrics and measurements in place, and if you are constantly enhancing your knowledge, right? Because as you go along, things will change. You will have to enrich your process, your knowledge of all of that. That's essential to make your service delivery consistent. When it comes to predictability, the important thing here is to be ready for unknown, right? So you have to be ready for change, be prepared for change. Something may change. You should be ready for alerts coming in that, something may be going off the track, right? If you're able to handle that alert in the right time, then you can make sure that the variation is minimal, right? And one more important thing is to constantly seek feedback. See, many times customer will be happy in terms of what you're doing, but customer may have some additional expectations. And unless you seek that input or seek their feedback, you may miss that out. So it's also important to seek that, and then you align yourself based on that. And when it comes to the continuous improvement, the most important part is to challenge the status quo. Even if you are doing very well, right, you should still try to find and optimize your processes or enhance your processes and do things which can save you time, right? That's and of course there are so many, the technological advancement which is happening nowadays. So you can leverage all of that. So by adhering to the processes, having right metrics and all of that, plus be alert to the changes and seek your feedbacks to the client, and keep enhancing your processes, optimizing your processes, leveraging your technologies. This is how we can achieve these three things. Now, typically what happens is when we start engagement or when something is happening on a regular basis, we tend to get into a mode where things happen on a regular basis, right? We are pretty confident about it. But then sometimes, we become lax, or maybe, some slip happens here and there, and that's where it kind of impacts. And, I picked up one case. It's one of the client, which was very important client for this customer. And while they were consistent and predictable earlier, but then there was a particular rollout happen where service provider really did goofed up, right? So there was a serious concern raised. So I will share that, and then the delivery head, how he brought in some changes and how he brought it back in the consistent and improving way. Okay, so so this client he was, or he still is, one of the top 5 in their industry. We have multiple industry, right? Manufacturing, retail, aviation, oil and gas, education, so many different industries. So for their respective industry, they are globally in the top 5, right? So very, very important customer from that perspective. The engagement which I'm talking about, it was a transformational nature. So there was legacy system, very, very critical business system, which was being transformed into a state-of-the-art system. And the scope was to roll out those new system across multiple countries. There were some 20 odd countries where it was to be rolled out. Some 3 or 4 were already rolled out, and where the things were kind of okay. But I think it was the 5th country where the rollout really went really terrible. And that's where the customer really complained about it. Now, the big risk for service provider, even for client, was that this particular business system, the critical system, was generating a revenue of about $1 billion per month, right? So it was so critical for a client. So if something goes wrong here, the kind of impact it will have, that was difficult to assess also, right, in terms of the impact it can do. And the reason I said the 5th country rollout, that was below par. There were a lot of issues happened there. So that's where the problem happened. And of course, the fallout was that it was creating a credibility issue, both for client as well as service provider. Now, when we say, the problem was there, there's some feedback, direct and indirect, which we had received from the client. And some of them I've put it here. So first and foremost, the head of the Europe of that particular business client had called directly to the regional head of the service provider and telling him no uncertain term that the delivery was really not up to the mark. And something drastic needs to be done. Otherwise, there's a real risk in the relationship. So you can understand, at that level, if the complaint is coming. And on the customer satisfaction, or CSAT, after that country rollout, they had given a rating of 5. It was actually below 5. Now, anything which is 9 and above is supposed to be good. But if something falls below 8 on a scale of 10, it raises alarm, right? Typically, service provider will try to find out what needs to be done to take it at least beyond 8, preferably beyond 9. So you can imagine if the rating is below 5, the kind of anxiety or kind of mistrust it ended up creating. And the reason, the main concern which was coming was more in terms of the priority 1 issues. Now, priority 1 issues are those issues which makes the system not usable, right? Or maybe a major portion of it not usable. Maybe customer is not able to carry the functions or whatever is expected, right? So it needs to be addressed immediately, right? We cannot, even a few minutes of delay can have a huge impact. And then few end users also complain about system being unstable or being cumbersome. So these were the feedback which we're getting from the client. Internal in the service provider side, the team member, their confidence was really, really low. What happened in the previous country rollout, it was still weighing high on their head. And, they were kind of really feeling bad about it. And they were kind of scared that something similar may happen again. The business head was under tremendous pressure, because you can understand there's such an important client, and if something goes wrong, then it can create a big problem. He might even lose his job, right? So it was that serious. But then he took some actions. He brought in the delivery head from outside, and he was given the task to make a change. Now, when you have somebody coming from outside, sometimes you do have advantage that he or she is not carrying any baggage. So, they can try out doing things differently. And this delivery head was quite an experienced one. So he applied a method which helped him a lot in his earlier engagements in other clients.
Previous slide, that statement following risk is not clear. Can you please show that?
Reason?
No, the statement risk. impact to client on revenue of more than $1 billion per month. I'm not able to get this.
Okay, so this particular the system which was being transformed, this was a critical business. This was a critical system which their end user were using, and through those usage, client was getting a revenue of about $1 billion every month. It was than that. Now, when the system, if the country rollout, if the system is not stable, it was not good. So it was impacting because customers were not able to use it. So the revenue fell.
So revenue dipped. That's what you want to say.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So this was the sixth step which the delivery head followed. And I've given it an acronym. The first letters of all of this, if you say, it is ASK AKC, which is Ask AKC. So it becomes easier to remember that. Now, the first step was basically to ascertain the root of the problem. Now, many times what happens is when you see a problem, start working on it, it may be more of a symptom, right? It's more like a fever. Fever is not a problem. Problem could be viral, maybe bacteria, something else, right? So it's very important to ascertain the root of the problem. And there are different ways you can do it. 5Y is a simple method which can be used. Fishbone is another tool which can be used to identify the root causes. Now, once the root causes is identified, typically you will end up with multiple different root causes and each of them having different degree of impact, right? Now, you have limited resource, you have limited effort and team and all that. So while working on root causes, you want to make sure you want to work on those ones which is having a bigger impact, right? While every root causes will have impact, some will have more, some will have less. So how to separate those trivial meaning or what we call it noise from those root causes to separate that out and pick significant few, which are the main ones which is making a big impact. And one simple tool of that is Pareto, which is also called 80-20, which basically says 80% of the problem is because of the 20% of the reasons, right? So, that helps in terms of identifying. So the delivery head, he applied these two steps to identify what is the underlying problem. While there were country rollout which suffered, but what were the underlying problem? Then next three is to identify the changes or actions which needs to be picked up. So no by similar instances. This basically says that, can you look back on your repository of your experience, right? What did you do in the past? If you had something which was similar, did you do something there? If it was a failure, did you mitigate something like that? If there was a success, did you take it to replicate somewhere else, right? If there was accolade, how did you handle it? So the delivery head, he used to call it Red Book. It was basically a collection of his success and failures and complaints and accolades in a simple way so that he can really pinpoint some of them for reuse later on. So, he looked at that to pick up some actions from that. Then he also pulled the team together, particularly the senior ones, and had a conversation with them saying that let's try and understand from their perspective, what do they anticipate could go wrong, right? Whatever the plans are there is all that is fine, but still they wanted to understand what could go wrong. And it was a simple Excel sheet, which helped in terms of issue prediction and all that. And based on that, what action can be picked up. And he also involved all the stakeholder, not just the team member, but some of the client representative, even third party. There were some third party vendors who were involved. And along with them, had some discussions to identify what changes or what action they want to bring in. Now, this can be done in two ways. One is brainstorming. When you have a relatively smaller team, let's say 20, 30 member, you can put them together, you can hear out their ideas. Aim is to collect ideas, not to kind of counter it. Somebody can always build on top of it, but not to counter it. And other is called diverging and converging. This is typically applied when you have a larger team, 100, 200, 500 kind of thing. Now, in this case, this was more than 250 member team. So delivery head brought in. So in diverging, they basically created smaller group in the team from different locations. They did the brainstorming. And once they got all the ideas, then a couple of representatives from each of these groups, they sat together and they looked at all those ideas which came from different groups and then tried to converge it. Some common thing, some complementing thing, and all of that. So these 3 steps then helped in terms of identifying the changes and actions. And finally, once all that was done, converted into a implementation plan. Break it down the milestone into some milestone, put some timeline, and then track the execution of it. So this is the 6th step which he applied to turn around, this whole situation. So we'll go through each of them quickly. So in terms of ascertaining, I picked up just as an example. So he applied this 5 why technique, and a couple of concern which was raised by client, right? The complaint which was from head of Europe to the regional head of the service provider, and also the CSAT being low. So this was kind of looked at. And in 5 why technique, basically you keep asking question till the time you get to the 5th level, which typically will give you the root of the problem. So the question was asked that, why it is CSAT is so bad, or why did the head of the Europe complain? So there were multiple answers. So top 2 answers were high number of priority 1 issues and instability of the new system. Then again ask the question, why high number of priority 1 issues? Maybe high load on dependency on infrastructure. Again ask why. So there were a couple of answers to that. The existing infrastructure was inadequate for the new system, and maybe some applications was hogging the resources. Right? Why infrastructure was inadequate? Because there were surprise issues coming in, and the required load on the infrastructure was not assessed. Now, why there were surprise issues? Then there were fear of informing about the likely issues. Some member kind of expected that something will go wrong, but there was a fear to do that. And also there were only lagging indicators. Lagging indicators means once the event has happened, then you are being reporting, right? It's more of a post-mortem. But there was no leading indicator. There was no prior information. There was no alert systems in place, right? Which can highlight it. So this is how this came up. So when he did it for this particular concern, there were 7 5 why, using 5 why technique, 7 root causes came out, out of which 1, which is loss of member holding knowledge, came twice. So that's a duplicate one. You might get it. So, but 6 were unique cases, right? So this is the first step of ascertaining what is the root cause. Then he applied the Pareto Principle to identify which are this, from this 6 unique, which are the ones which we need to work upon. So he created 4 different groups, a group of delivery managers, team leads, architects, and SMEs, and gave all the 6 root causes to them and asked them to assess it, the impact of these root causes on the CSAT. Based on their assessment, whichever is having maximum impact, they can give 5. Whichever is less, they can give 1. So each group came up with their own assessment of each of these factors, root causes. Then all these root causes, all these ticks were kind of added together, and the ranking was done for all these root causes. So fear of informing about the likely issues with 18 ticks came as number 1, whereas ineffective reviews of code with 8 ticks, it came as number 6. Then he redrew it on the ranking order. So first coming on top, second following that, like that, and effective, which was the 6th one, coming at the bottom. So the number of ticks, each of them got it. Then he also got the cumulative ticks. So for the first one is same. For the second one, first and second together, 17 plus 18 is 35. For the third one, it is 16 plus 35 is 51. Like that, got it. And then he also looked at what is the percentage of this in terms of the impact. So by the time he went to the fourth one, which is individual brilliance but lacking collective excellence, it was close to about 80%. So these were the four then he picked up as the key underlying problem which needs to be addressed. Ineffective reviews or loss of member holding knowledge, they were also root causes, but possibly not having that much impact. So in the priority, they first picked out this. So similarly, they applied it for other concerns also, and eventually they came up with total 6 underlying root causes, out of which the red one which you see were coming from this root cause of CSAT, which we just saw an example. Okay, so this gave the underlying causes. Then he started looking at what are the changes which needs to be brought in. So I mentioned about the red book. So as I said, red book is more of a collection of failure and successes. In case of failure, what steps were taken to mitigate? In case of success, what steps taken to replicate? Right. So that's what he did. And he looked at some of the past engagement. So for example, there was a client in the US where they had failed initially because client was unhappy with the weak governance. And to mitigate it, they put a 3x3 governance in reporting. So he picked up that. Similarly, for a client in Australia, when they had put in an alert system, they were very, very happy. They were very happy about it. It gave them very good satisfaction. So he picked up like that. So like that, he looked at complaint also, some actions picked up from there. Accolade also, the team member felt something good about it. So those actions were also picked up. So from this red book, he picked up these actions. So these were the kind of changes which he wanted to bring in terms of team bonding, in terms of promoting excellence, in terms of anticipating issues, and also tightening the governance reporting. What you see in red here is these actions which he picked up from the red book or from the past. Now the beauty is, since this is already done for some engagement, you have known how positive impact it had, it becomes very easy to implement it. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? And you can apply it very easily, right? And have very high confidence in that. So he picked up this. Then he looked at, what could go wrong. So he brought the team and senior member of the team, and they sat together. They spent almost half a day anticipating what could go wrong. And this was a big list, about 4 pages long. But then from there, they picked up, I've just picked up few example ones. For example, team felt they might get high number of P1 and P2 issues. And if that happens, that will have a severe impact. So then deliberate pushed them to come up with a solution or workaround. And some ideas came that let's identify the very critical systems, identify a team of experts who can pick up issues for that critical system, right? And even be ready with some workaround for the kind of issues which they expected. It was further drilled down in terms of what were those potential issues. And for each of them, the workaround was kind of identified, over multiple sittings. And they felt that once all of this is kind of put across, this will be effective action. It can take care of the concern. And there was a team formed, crack team, they named it. So delivery manager of each project will head it, supported by the delivery head. And of course, there will be other members in the team. So like that, there were multiple likely issues, which they picked up. Then the next step he did is to bring the team together and did the diverging and converging method, using which a lot of input came, and they picked a few additional action points from that. So if I go back to those action things which was identified, all the red ones were picked up from the past experience. Some additional one were picked up, which was like projecting group of members than individual. They felt that when we are talking more individual, then the cohesion of the team was kind of missing. So they thought, the team came up with the idea that we should appreciate the team, which is delivering something, even if individual has contributed more. Plus, they also came up with idea that they should be individual level, particularly at a team lead or manager or architect level, some service level objectives, SLOs, which is aligned with the business KPIs. So those were added. And also there was a additional action identified to form a crack team. This came from anticipating issues. Now there were some other action also came up, which were already identified, like coming up with likely issues, identifying workaround, leading indicator. These things also came up in those discussions, but since they were already there, it was carried forward. So once this set of actions were identified, then the delivery manager just looked at converting them in the implementation plan. Again, I'm taking just an example, some 2 actions here. One leading indicator, they identified that it will be implemented 6 weeks before go live, and rewarding issues detector will be done till the system stabilizes. When system goes live, it takes 4 to 6 or 8 weeks, depending on how the tickets are coming or the issues are being reported. So till the time it stabilizes, this will be rewarded. But then these were broken down into more granular milestones. So like leading indicator, this was broken down into 4.1, 4.2, 4.3. They were related to the indicators for servers, the indicators for apps, indicator for database. And that time they realized that if they want to have indicators for apps 6 weeks before, they have to have indicator for servers and database a couple of weeks before that. So this is how it was identified as a milestone. Similarly, for rewarding, it was identified that under each delivery manager, one person will be rewarded 4 weeks before every week, 4 weeks before go live, and 2 weeks before go live at an overall program level, whichever issue has really had great impact. So this is how it was implemented, and there were a lot of other actions which are there. So finally, this is how they implemented. And if I look in terms of how they did, the country rollout, which was immediate after that, they got a handful of P1s. The previous country rollout, there were more than 25 plus priority 1. This time they got only less than 5 P1s. But the great thing was, even in those priority 1 issues, since they had identified the workaround previously, the moment this issue came up, they were able to fix it, right? So, this is where they kind of predicted, they kind of be ready with the alerts. And the moment it came up, they could fix it very, very quickly so that the disruption was reduced. In most cases, customer did not even realize it. And another beauty is that the team identified almost 80% of the issues which were reported. What it means is, before client faced it or client knew about it, the team knew about it because they had those leading indicators, they had all those alert system in place. So they were able to identify and they could work on it and fix it. So that's how, they kind of implemented, and the country rollout went successfully. Client was very relaxed because they were worried that things may go wrong, but seeing it, they were very, very relaxed. Right. So that gave little more breathing time to the team. Then team went on to carry that positivity forward. So for that, they brought in service improvement, continuous service improvement, and they came up with 4 core themes, right? They came up with 4 different themes which they want to implement it. So, so these themes were, first was eliminating issues or eliminating resolution. Basically, what it says is that if you can avoid issue from occurring itself, that's the best resolution you can do, right? So you can prevent issue from happening. You can analyze trend to see where something is going wrong. You can even look at which is the code where something is going wrong, and you can make some finer changes there, minor modifications to fix it. So they identified that this will be one of the themes they will work on. The second was, they coined it as enhanced resolution. What it means is that if you have to still fix the issue, right? Can you do it in a better way? Can you standardize the process? Can you improve the process? If there's a way to automate certain things, can you automate? You can bring those automation tools. The third was diverting resolution. Now this was interesting because what the thought is that while issues is there, rather than team fixing it, if they can have someone else fix it, including client, that will be great. Now, why client should do it? But what they did is they created a lot of FAQs, a lot of self-help. They created stepwise processes to fix it, and they even developed some bots which can take care of a mundane like user ID, reset, some access issues, and all those kind of things, right? Minor database uploads and all those things. So they created, and somebody can just run it, right? And finally, they coined a term which is downward resolution. It aimed as making things faster and could be resolved by a junior member. Standard operating procedures, resolving issues on the knowledge based, looking at what happened in the past, leveraging that, and then running it so that even juniors can do it. You don't have to block all the senior people. So these are the 4 themes which they identified for the continuous service improvement. And as a team, every delivery manager, so each delivery manager was handling one project of the program. So they will pick up one theme every month out of these 4, and then they will work with the team to identify what could be done, and they did it. And they also identified the skill upgrade, knowledge augmentation, the skill augmentation, the mix of the team, youth versus experienced and all of that. And they decentralized a lot of authorities, right, in terms of the decision making. They kept challenging the status quo. So that's the way they implemented it, and also carried forward the good success from the previous country rollout. So then if you look at the next 3 country rollouts, the next country rollout, there were just 1 priority 1 issues. Previous it was 5, less than 5. Next time it was 1, and 95% of the issues the team was able to identify proactively. So that really built the confidence back in the client. The client gave a customer satisfaction of 9.2. So back in 9, what was below 5, it gone ahead of 9 once again. Next 3 country rollout, there was not a single P1. There were 3 country rollout together, not a single P1. And even priority 2 issues were reduced significantly, brought down to about 40% of the whole thing. And 95% issues were again identified by the team. And the CSAT continued improving. It improved to 9.5. And then after that, there were 7 country rollout, which happened together. There was not a single P1 again. Even the P2 incidents reduced. And the team identified more than 98% of issues themselves. So before client got to know about it, team could identify. The CSAT as expected improved further. But the best part is the client was so happy that eventually they announced some bonus to the team member. So that's the kind of turnaround which could be brought in with those steps. And as you can see, the consistency was brought in, the predictability was there, and it was continuously improving all the time. So as we went along. So that's the example I wanted to share. I hope you liked it. And if there's any questions, I can take it from here. Some details.
I have a question. I like the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, great.
The points I noted, it's a good example. The real issues I foresee here is most often people don't, keep red book the way you described. In
Absolutely.
fact, the whole thing of knowledge management evolved out of, Grumman, Northrop, okay? Because of failure, most companies don't maintain. If they maintain, it will be good, but that is an area I see. I also like I like ask AKC, that is yourself. AKC is yourself.
That's right. Yeah.
The most important thing here is, see, today we talk so much about testing. Testing as a process has evolved. Test planning, automated testing suite. How anybody imagine releasing a software to one country, a software product with so many glitches? See, I'm aware because I was also head of quality. You do not only functional testing, you do performance testing. You try to emulate the production environment inside, it is a pre-production environment, and you test out before you release. And despite the glitches have come through, means instead of doing, one has to get back to why test team release such a garbage. They're not supposed to do. A lot of analysis has gone. There is a way
Professor
to analyze the
Shankar,
problem.
is there a question, Professor Shankar?
That is a question? That is a question.
Okay.
Yeah, so first of all, thanks, Professor Sankar. You rightly said, a lot of time as an organization, where we falter is when we don't learn from those failures, right? Because they have tremendous amount of knowledge which they give you, and in most cases, even if we don't succeed, sometimes we might do certain things which has not helped turn around the thing, but still it will give you a lot of insight. And that becomes very, very useful. But not just that, some organizations will do failure and to some extent success also. What this guy was also doing is he was also collecting the accolades or even complaints, right, where customer had. And he had whatever steps he had taken, which had helped in those scenarios, he was collecting it and reusing it. So as you rightly said, yes, it makes a huge difference. And coming to that testing, see, testing is something which is really becoming more and more important in the current scenario, because rework, something going wrong, nobody can afford in the current context. So the more you do it, whether it's performance testing, it's a functional testing, non-functional testing, all of that, it's a huge, huge impact. And the last thing which I would like to share is another area where we are possibly still struggling as an industry is building the domain knowledge, the industry domain knowledge. We have a lot of IT folks, technically very strong, but when it comes to, let's say if I'm part of a client, which is a manufacturing client, I will possibly know about the functions for which that application is there. But knowing how that client is working, what is the functions of that client across, helps in terms of understanding the requirement, conversing it better. So I think those are the points you rightly said, and I really support that.
So Mr. Chaudhary, we have about 125 of our students attending, like I told you, and there's an excellent question on what is the future of operations management in terms of how it is going to be impacted by the onset of the digital enterprise.
Excellent, excellent. And see, digital, if you look at today, the way the digital is being used, or I would say being misused, is like, everything and anything is start calling digital. And if you ask me, IT by default is digital, right? But where the change is happening is how we can leverage technology more and more. And that's what the digital transformation is leading to. Now, there are two parts of it. One is in terms of how you use technologies, whether it's analytics, whether it's a cloud, artificial intelligence, and all of that, to build your system, right? Now, once the system is done, typically, people tend to move on to something else. But the real crux of it is how you are able to optimize the system, how you are able to improve it. And at that place, I think the operations plays a major, major role, right? In terms of making it work better and better every day. And believe me, once any system is done, is made for the first time, it has huge potential to improve. Within a year or two, it can improve as much as 30 to 40%. Some of the statistics shows that it can be improved as much as 40%. In that. So that's where delivery and operations play a huge role, and technology, of course, leveraging the technology.
Okay, and another interesting question is process management and operations management one and the same? Is process management a large part of operations management, or how do you sort of are these two divorced subjects, and so on? Can you shed some light, please?
Excellent. I think it's really difficult to answer that. Talking to all the management gurus, talking about management will be a bit of a challenge. So, my philosophy of management is slightly different. For me, management is a common sense, right? If you see, and I keep giving example. If you look at the shopkeeper, the small shopkeepers, right? They know how to take care of their books. They know how to negotiate with the client, replenish the stock. They do everything. They don't go through, large scale kind of a training, theoretical training. They learn it on the job, right? Now, if I look at management is kind of encompassing everything. And when you look at it in a specialized area, then you make it, let's say, like you said, process. So you're more focused in terms of how, as a process, we can manage it. How we can just look at, let's not worry about what is the outcome, but let's look at more from a process perspective, how it is kind of gelling with each other, how we are managing, how we can optimize it. Then we can look at operations. And when I say operations, I can look at other aspect of it, right? Even staffing could be part of operations. Even some extent, finance could be part of operations. Some change management could be part of operations. So, that could be another bucket. Finance could be a third bucket. So my mind, I think management is an overall thing. And we do have, I would say, segments within that for specialization or for having more focus. We can call it that way. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
And
So
I recollect what you were saying, in terms of what MS Dhoni used to say: just follow the process and you will eventually get your outcome.
Exactly. Yeah.
So there is a question from our faculty which talks about operations management increasingly seen in the healthcare domain, and fundamentally to cut costs. So do you feel that this is a right approach, that operations management, processes, technology to cut costs in a vital area like healthcare, could it have detrimental effects? It's a difficult question to answer, I know, because this is cost versus maybe effectiveness. So what do you think?
Excellent question. And as you rightly said, it's a little tricky to answer it because, where the things are moving. But the way I look at it is, see, if I look at from IT perspective, today IT is working in bimodal mode. And when I say bimodal, I mean that there is an IT which is taking care of the existing systems, right? Stabilizing it, running it to make the things, work. And that's where the cost is very, very important, because you have to make sure the system is stable, the cost is kind of maintained. At the same time, and these are typically legacy system or somewhat old system. Same time, IT is also enabling and working very closely with business to look at forward, right? Which is more of agile, what we call it, or new things which can be done. Now the difference in these two modes is, in the first mode, it is more like stability, defined plan, cost reduction as a factor. Whereas in the second mode, it is more like evolving plan. You don't have a well-defined plan. You take something, you learn, and then you build on it, right? It keeps evolving. More than cost, it is the value which you deliver, right? So if you are able to even if you have to spend extra cost, but that is adding value to the end user, right? It makes customer happy or it gives you more business. It's more like that. Can you leverage technology more better? How you can be more agile in terms of those kind of things. So I would say, rather than saying whether this can be used for cost reduction only, or should it be used for other aspect, I think today we are seeing it happening, not only in healthcare, but even in other industries also. Aviation is another example where a lot of things is happening in the agile mode as well as in the, so it is working in my model, and it tries to have a good balance between the two.
Brilliant. Mohan, do you have your question?
So I had a question. This excellent case, and where you had a long-term project, basically. I think it's a multi-year rollout where you had several countries getting several applications getting implemented. So I had a question. So definitely you used a lot of here bots were used, that is the RPA, more optimized. So what benefits to a customer? Because a multi-year rollout, the customer will come back and say, I need so much benefits coming out of your operations. So what were the benefits you could give in from the cost perspective?
Yeah, excellent. Sorry, there was a bit of a network issue, but what I understood in bits and pieces is, in terms of this improvement which was brought in, what was the value delivered to the customer?
Exactly.
Okay. So see, as you rightly said, this was a multi-country rollout. So one of the best benefit which customer got it, and particularly as you go from one country to another country, there are a lot of things which you learn in the process, right? So you can even customize certain things. Now, I remember for this particular client, they had something which was being done once a day, right? I mean, there was a limitation because certain thing has to be printed and it has to be delivered to the client, right? There will be a postal thing involved and all of that. Now that activity was becoming a limitation that it can be done only once a day because of all those dependencies. Now, as we went along, we realized, or the team realized, that if we are able to improve that process, if we are able to do it maybe twice a day, it will have a huge business impact. And by the time this whole thing got over, the revenue from $1 billion US, it has reached about $1.7 billion monthly.
Okay.
The kind of, because they could do those things twice in the same day. So, it's just one example. And there were many.
Okay, excellent.
So, if I have to just look at one major one, that was the kind of benefit.
Thank you. So I would now like to invite our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. Murthy. Sir, good afternoon. And would you like to share your thoughts, please?
Nothing in specific, Captain Sir, because I joined the meeting a little late. The lecture was interesting. I think I could look at the question answer session, which was very interesting. I think thanks to Anil sir for considering to deliver this lecture. I think I also request him to deliver another lecture at a later date. No specific comments because I joined the lecture a little late.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for coming from a busy schedule. And we had a fairly large participation from our faculty as well as students who are on campus at the moment. So it was broadcast in class and they asked some interesting questions. And on behalf of BITES Bengaluru and Dayanand Sagar University, I would like to thank Mr. Anil Chaudhary for being here today. Anil, please do visit us when possible, and we would like to host you on campus and meet you in person.
Thanks a lot. I really appreciate this time, and thanks a lot, Professor Murthy. I had another session which we had done before this.
Sure.
It really looks great, and thanks the whole faculty team. It was very interesting. Some questions were really good ones. And I can definitely see it coming from such a brilliant institute. So, they were coming very, very nicely. And I'm happy to be part of it. It will be my pleasure to come over and meet you in person. So thanks a lot for hosting me, and looking forward to more interaction going forward.
Thank you, Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir. Thank you, all my faculty colleagues. Thank you, students, for being here today. And finally, thank you, Mr. Choudhary. We'll catch up one of these days. So have a wonderful day.
You all. Thanks. Bye-bye.